Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm going to show you how to install Windows 10 on a virtual machine, in this case using VirtualBox. So we go ahead and go to the VirtualBox website and go to the download section. Then you're going to choose your host. In this case we're a Windows host. And you download VirtualBox. So I already did that, so I'm going to go ahead and open this over here. Cancel this download. We're going to hit run. We're just going to install VirtualBox like any other installer. All of these settings can stay the same. This is just extra support, things that have to be installed, like fake network drivers and USB drivers to kind of pass along information from the main host to the client. So just leave it all the same, it's fine. Here you could choose where you want the shortcuts. We'll go ahead and leave everything as is. Hit yes, install, and just let it take its course. Okay, so everything's installed. We can have it automatically start Oracle VirtualBox after installation. It's actually right here on the desktop, which we could click, but let's go ahead and open it there. Hey, what up, Flux 420? Playing spin tires, really? I want to get back into that game. Okay. So, I actually have some virtual machines saved here from a while back, I guess. That's odd. Let me remove these. Remove. So we want to start from scratch. Let's get everything clean. Let's see. It's interesting that it remembered my settings even though I just freshly installed it. I guess it just saved my stuff. So anyway, here's VirtualBox, and this is where your virtual machines will show up on the left side. And we want to make a new virtual machine. So we'll go ahead and click New. And let's name it Windows 10, because that's what we're going to be installing today. And it automatically changed it to Windows 10 because it knew that's what we were typing, so that's cool. We could leave that as is. It already knows how to handle it. You could change it to 32-bit if you'd like. I leave it at 64 because that's what I'm working with, and everything else stays the same. So we'll go ahead and hit next. And here we could choose how much RAM to allow this machine to use. And we generally want to not give it all of the system resources, but give it enough to work with. So in this case, I have 8 gigs of RAM, so I want to give it at least 2 because that's the minimum requirement for Windows, but I want to give it, let's just say 4 gigs. That way it saves half of it for the main OS so nothing gets unstable. So this might be a little different for you if you have 4 gigs, if you have 16, like whatever you happen to have, just kind of make sure you leave enough resources depending on what each machine is going to be used for, especially if you're going to leave your main OS working with load in the background. So then here we can create a virtual hard disk, and we can use an existing file, but since we're setting it up fresh, let's just go ahead and create a virtual one. The recommended size is 32 gigs, but we'll go more into that soon. So here we could choose a VirtualBox image or virtual hard disk or virtual machine disk. I prefer VirtualBox disk image or VDI because I really like VirtualBox and I don't foresee having to switch between things, and I don't really want to like jump into different formats. So I like VDI, it works well. And then here's the type of storage you want to have. You could have a fixed size and say I never want this hard drive to go above 32 gigs, like, or 64 gigs or 100 gigs, whatever you want to set it at, that's its limit. Dynamically allocated lets it actually grow in size based on how much you're using. I prefer it like that. The only problem is that if you do use it often and you fill up a lot, it doesn't shrink back. So if you have 100 gigs of data on it one day, it's never going to get smaller than 100 gigs. So that's something to look out for. So in that case, you might want to do a fixed size just to ensure nothing gets out of hand, and you can kind of keep an eye on it and move files and resources back and forth. So yeah, that's up to you. Let's go ahead and do fixed size in this case because we want to give it a little sandbox mode. We don't want to give it too much of our main space, and we can go ahead and leave it at 32 gigs. It's a good number. And we're back. So that's finally done. We have a 32 gig hard drive now for our Windows 10 machine, which doesn't have Windows 10 on it just yet and hasn't been configured just yet. So we're going to do that now. We're going to go to Settings. And I'm just going to run through these real quick so you kind of know what everything does. So this is where you can name your virtual machine. We already did this in the setup. This is your snapshot folder. Your shared clipboard, I like to leave it bidirectional. That means you can copy and paste between operating systems, and I also like to leave drag and drop bidirectional, so you can drag files and back and forth. And this is a nice little feature that Oracle adds in. You can add a description if you'd like, just as a reminder of whatever you want it to be. You can enable encryption. I usually don't do this, but you can put a password so no one can access the virtual machine separately from the actual virtual machine having its own password. Like you could install a password on Windows on a user account. So if we jump down here to System, this is how much memory we gave it. We gave it 4 out of 8 gigs in our case. You could choose if you want a virtual floppy drive to boot or not. I can usually take that off. We want the optical drive and a hard disk. So we want the optical drive to come up first because that's where we're going to put the ISO for Windows 10. So this is fine how it's set up. And we can even enable network booting if we wanted to, but we're not going to do any of this. The chipset, if you have any issues with the chipset, you could change it here. Usually it's automatically set to what's best. If you would like to install any kind of extra things like that, you can. I have my pointing device set as a tablet, but I could use a multi-touch tablet too because my screen supports that. So in the processor, we can choose how many processors we can actually allow the virtual machine to use. So I have a single CPU with 4 cores, 2 logical, I believe. So anyway, we can choose to give it more processors. I like to just give it one processor so that it doesn't start getting kind of glitchy. I would say if you have a 4 core, give it 2. If you have an 8 core, give it 4, but never more than that because you don't want it to get unstable. Execution cap, you can leave it 100%. Acceleration, this is just any kind of extra acceleration that your computer supports. So if you have like AMD, you could use AMDV. If you have Intel hardware virtualization, you could choose those. So we can leave, virtualization, acceleration, you could choose those, but we generally don't have to change this. The main part is the processor, giving it 1 or 2 CPU cores, and the base memory. And then in display, we can give it video memory, max this out. 128 is the most you're going to get. You're not going to be playing games in the virtual machine. It would be nice if we could, but it's just not as advanced yet. So always enable acceleration when you can. Gives it a few more features in it, but it's just not going to be one-to-one using your GPU. It's going to limit your video memory. It's going to limit everything involved. So that's pretty much it. And then remote display and video capture, we don't really need those unless we're doing something very advanced or specific, wanting to record or transmit data. And then storage, we already set up. We have our Windows 10 hard drive right here. But what we are going to do is we want to connect, essentially, or put in a virtual CD of our Windows 10 media. So I have a Windows 10 ISO here. I have a video that you can watch on how to create Windows 10 ISOs and download them directly from Microsoft using the media creation tool, which is up here, and I'll link to that below so you can get to that if you need to make a Windows 10 ISO. Stuff is falling all over the place. So we'll go ahead and click on this CD here, and we'll load it over here, and we'll choose a virtual optical disk file, and that's an ISO basically. Once it comes up, we're going to look for our ISO. It's on the desktop, and Windows 10. Alright, so now we have a 3.3 gig Windows 10 ISO file plugged into, or essentially put into, the virtual CD drive, and that's going to boot before the hard drive. So that'll let us install Windows 10. So then audio, we want to leave it enabled. Network, leave everything as is. It's usually configured properly from the driver install. We can have virtual serial ports if we wanted to do that. USB controllers are very useful. You can choose what kind of controller to set it up as, and if your computer supports it, you can go all the way up to 3.0. I'm going to use 1.1 just because it's what works for me. My computer doesn't support all that. Shared folders. If you'd like to share something between the OS and the other system, especially if you don't have drag and drop enabled, you can set up a shared folder that you can copy and paste files. Say you want to download something from the main machine and copy over an installer file to the virtual machine. You could do that. And then user interface. Just give some options to show the buttons on the top of the screen or on the bottom of the screen. We can also leave that as is. So now we have our virtual machine pretty much ready to go, and it should boot right into the Windows 10 media and start installing. So let's go ahead and try this out. Alright, and here we are. We have the Windows logo, and pretty soon we should see the loading sign down here to let us know that Windows is beginning the install process. And you can just go ahead and fill out everything as you would and install Windows 10 on your brand new virtual machine. Alright, let me know if you have any questions. Have a good day. Peace.